What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Nerdthusiast Wrestling Podcast. I am Chrissy Francesco. With me, as always, is Kyle Barone. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. How you doing?
Doing very well. How was your holiday?
It was good. It was hectic because we had to drive everywhere and see some family. My wife's over wrapping gifts, so if your daughter gets a big Amazon box with shit inside of it, don't be mad.
Uh,
My wife was like, "I'm just wrapping the Amazon box." I'm like, "She won't care. She's two."
exactly. She doesn't care. No, like literally the entire time we had to start the unwrapping, and then she got the gist. Oh, I get to rip this apart. So, but no, it was good stuff. We hope everybody had a great holiday, whether it was Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa is going on. Today, since we are entering probably, if you're a true wrestling fan, the most popular time of the year is Royal Rumble season. As you know, Barone and many of the IWC talks about all the time. It's like the only event left where you truly can't predict it, right?
Yeah, there's always like a handful of guys where you're like, this person might win, this person might win, but you honestly never know. And if you stay off the internet, it's really a surprise
Yeah,
because there's a lot of dickheads that like to post like, oh, Drew McIntyre is gonna, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
so
So, all right. So today, what we're going to do, we're going to go in chronological order of the rumbles that we chose to cover. So today we are going to start this whole rumble season off with the
first off, hang on. Before we start, I want to say rest in peace to two people. Danny Hodge
mm-hmm,
died on Christmas, and he's a guy who was way before our time.
mm-hmm.
But if you look into it, he did a lot for amateur wrestling. I think he was a silver medalist in the Olympics or the World Games.
Yep.
And he's one of the pioneers of professional wrestling. So he's an old school guy. A lot of people talk about who is, tougher than nails, a guy that would stretch anybody who gets in a ring with him.
Mm-hmm.
But way before my time, never seen a match of his, but you always hear about Pritchard and JR talk about him. So
Yeah.
he passed away on Christmas. And then the day after Christmas, one that's a guy we watched who's
Yep.
really close to our age,
Mm-hmm.
John Huber, better known as Luke Harper or Brody Lee, passed away out of nowhere.
Yeah, that was rough.
He was only 40. He just turned 41 in December.
Sheesh.
And apparently he had lung issues that started in October, right after
Mm-hmm.
that dog collar match.
Yep.
And surprisingly, this is a thing I love about AEW is his wife wanted them to keep it quiet, and they did.
Yeah. Yep.
Nothing leaked about this. You know, like with WWE, every time there's a whisper or something, it's all over the internet because someone backstage leaks it.
Yep.
I didn't hear anything about this, about him being in the hospital, nothing. I just heard, like, I sent you the thing out of nowhere. I'm like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And you're like, holy shit, oh my God, like, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you start thinking, like, was it suicide? Was it, because it's wrestling, did he overdose?
Right.
Everything. And then you find it was non-COVID related lung issues. And man, those videos of him and his kid.
Oh my gosh.
Enzo talking about him and Bray Wyatt's post, man, it hurt. It was sad, really sad.
Yeah, that one hurt big. And then you read the long, like the long post like Randy Orton had. And then, like you said, I sent you the one by Enzo, and like it hits you because again, when a guy like that, you literally watched him since the day he walked into WWE. And you and I talked over the years how, guys like Luke Harper and Cesaro were like the most underrated workers in the entire industry.
Yeah, guys that the fans love, absolutely
yeah.
love. Every time they're in the ring, they're over. But for some reason, like, creative doesn't see it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was in my notes. That was going to be the next thing. So thankfully you cut me off there to really get that started because, rest in power to those guys. And, to the families of Luke Harper, Brody Lee, man, that one hurt. He left two boys behind, and a wife.
Ed said, Edge's post was pretty cool. He said, there's like rare people you meet in the wrestling business where no one has anything bad to say about him.
Mm-hmm.
And they said Brody was one of those guys.
Yeah.
He was like, and if you read everyone's post, everyone says like how much of a family man he was, how nice he was, how his smile lit up the room. Like I've never heard anyone say anything bad about it. Like Jericho posted that picture of all the guys with the, someone made up t-shirts of Brody or Luke Harper because he was like upset he didn't have any merch. So
Yeah.
someone went out and made a bunch of shirts for him because they all liked him so much.
Right.
You know,
And
so,
you
yeah,
know,
that would hurt. That sucks.
yeah, and big kudos to like guys like CM Punk and Mick Foley who are donating all of their merch sales and profits to the family of Luke Harper or John
Yeah, I saw
Huber.
Collar and Elbows having a T-shirt, a Brody shirt come out, and 100% of all those profits. I think it was Collar and Elbow or Pro Wrestling. He's one of them, where all the sales will go right to the family, which
Okay.
is pretty cool.
And it might be Collar and Elbow because they did a great thing for Chad Gaspard when he passed too, when all the
Yeah,
proceeds went to his
I
family. So
think it
yeah.
is Collar and Elbow. I'm pretty sure it was.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if after we record this, I'll find it and I'll post it, and our Instagram page and everywhere that we can get it out there too. So, yeah, just a tough one, but however, now on to more positive things. I guess you could say more
Yeah,
positive things. The 1997 Royal Rumble. So I think what Broner and I decided to do was do 97, then go from there. We're going to do 97, 2001. And then I believe we were going to do 2004. And then was it 2007? And then the one that you went to, which was 2015.
15. Yeah, the
Right.
one Roman Reigns won, the first
Right.
one.
Which was a big one because my God, the crowd was hot that night.
Yeah,
And that was the night of an incredible triple threat with Rollins, Cena, and Brock.
yeah.
But that was the night that WWE crowned Roman, and Philadelphia booed him out of the building,
Booed
booed
the
him
shit
and The
out of him.
Rock out of the
And
building.
Dude, yeah, that's when we talk about it more. We'll get into it, but when the Rock can't get you over, that's pretty rough.
You're dead to rights. All right, so the 1997 Royal Rumble was the 10th time that the WWE held the annual January event. By this point, it had really gained a lot of momentum as one of the most important matches of the year. We had seen so many scenarios for the end of the match, and we knew how important it was to win because the winner was guaranteed a shot at the WWE champion at WrestleMania. The 1997 Rumble changed things a lot. It was a time when the WWF had started to gain some serious momentum thanks to the huge roster turnover that they went through in the previous 2 years. You could tell that things were headed in the right direction. Stone Cold Steve Austin became a huge star in 1996 as a heel that didn't back down from anybody. He built up a huge rivalry with Bret Hart. Others were moving up their ranks too, but Austin had something real special about him that it was only a matter of time before he became that top guy. That was like about a year later, but 97 obviously was the birth of Stone Cold Steve Austin. There was a huge WWE title match at the close of the show for the hometown hero Shawn Michaels challenged the always technical Psycho Sid for the gold. WWF really drove home the point that the show was in San Antonio. They had hoped that the Alamo Dome would have been sold out. The 10th Rumble event was held January 19th in 97. Let's see here. The attendance of the show was supposed to be around 70,000 fans. The idea that they thought they could sell out the Alamo Dome, it was Shawn Michaels' hometown. Texas is a huge hotbed for pro wrestling. That didn't happen. They gave out a lot of tickets, but according to Dave Meltzer and stuff, the actual number was probably around 47,500 paid and 12,500 comps. Still 60,500 people. The gate was $480,000. And the fact that also it came out that WWE only paid a flat rent fee of 125 grand to rent out the Alamo Dome.
That's not bad.
No, not at all. So when
60,000 people is nothing to shake your head at either.
Not in 97. Yeah, and
outside of like WrestleMania 3, they weren't doing monster shows like that.
I'm glad you said that. Do you want to know how bad business was for the WWF in 97? The last time the WWF drew 20,000 fans was WrestleMania 10 in 94 at MSG, paid fans. The 96 Rumble had a sellout of 9,600 people. The previous month, December of 96, the WWF held In Your House 12, It's Time, and drew 5,700 folks with Sid and Bret on top.
Jesus.
So the 97 Royal Rumble had 60,000 people. The WWE wasn't able to put more than 20,000 for over 3 years almost at that point. So that's how
crazy.
Yeah, that was, the 97 Royal Rumble came at the WWF's lowest point. The television ratings were tanking. On June 10th, 1996, the WWF Monday Night Raw had eked out a minuscule rating win over WCW Monday Nitro, but Raw had not been within shouting distance of its competition since June 10th, 1996. Through the fall, even Nitro doubled Raw's ratings on most Monday nights. On the last two Mondays of the calendar year, WCW outright just doubled or more the Raw rating. In the final show before this Rumble, Raw posted a 2.3 rating, the show's highest figure in nearly a month, but was hammered by Nitro's 3.7. Um, the, the 97 Rumble had 244,000 buys on pay-per-view, down from 1996, which had 260,000. So it was obvious where the business was here in the beginning of 1997. That's incredible because if you look, I think it was like 2 years later, the 99 Rumble had, I think, like 600,000 buys. So
Shoot.
that's how hot the business took off after 97.
Yeah. Well, you figure it's, the Attitude Era was just basically starting here, around here. And the Austin era would kick off. It's King of the Ring, but like this is all around the same time where Austin's coming up, Foley's gaining steam, The Rock is or Rocky Maivia. Soon he's going to be turning heel and all that. So it's like the Attitude Era we remember is in its infancy here. So you can see why from 97 to 99 everything takes off because all the popular guys are basically starting to get their momentum.
Yeah, and as we get into the Rumble here, and we'll talk about how important Austin is. Like this was really the beginning of the catapult, strapping the rocket, as they say in wrestling, to Stone Cold. Was this 97 Rumble, and a lot of the credit of the popularity of this Rumble and where the business went in 97, a lot of the credit has to go to Steve Austin, who was now Stone Cold. He was gaining a lot of steam as the guy that everybody in the business was talking about. He was coming off a classic against Bret Hart at the Survivor Series in 96 at MSG. That would make the two of them the focus of the Rumble match in 97, the beginning of 97. The rest of the roster was getting better too. I'm not even sure. We hadn't gotten to DX yet. That was a little bit further down the line after this. The company, like I said, wasn't at their best, but they were about to get there. And this was a huge, not no pun intended. This was a huge undertaking. Business was so down, as you and I just said, dude. Like it takes balls to say, you know what? We just had 5,000 people at December pay-per-view. Let's try to get 60,000 people at the Alamo Dome.
Yeah, it really does.
So then we're going to not go over every match, but if, Barone, if you have something you want to come in here, I pretty much just kind of started my analysis with Vader versus Undertaker. But I know you texted me a little bit about the undercard of the Rumble of 97 is regarded as kind of a letdown. What were your thoughts on the undercard? I know this was right around the time WWF had a deal with Lucha and AAA. What were your thoughts of this?
I didn't even watch it. It's not even on the network.
Oh my goodness!
I put the Rumble on today to watch. I wanted to watch the Undertaker Vader match, but yeah, when I looked on Wikipedia, I was looking at like the first three, basically the dark matches. I had no clue who these guys were, and I'm clicking on their names, and you read above it's when they had a deal with that Lucha program. And I texted you yesterday about the first name I clicked on. I can't remember his name, but I was like, yo, this kid was 18 years old in this match. And he's at the Royal Rumble at 18 years old. And then I started reading like, wow, he died a couple years ago. Who was he? He was a dude that, I said Rey Mysterio killed, but it was the guy who died in that match with Rey Mysterio 5 years ago.
Right.
And I was like, dude, here he is. Like, he was 35 when he passed away. Here he is in 97 at the Royal Rumble. I couldn't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you look at the undercard, it's a bunch of people. I got no clue who they are.
I agree. So I started basically my analysis of writing. I watched the pay-per-view the other day in its entirety, and I just kind of wrote a lot of things down here, my analysis of just certain matches, since, it's the Royal Rumble, so there's so much you can cover, and we don't want to talk here for an hour. So I just figured I'd start at we'll hit the big spots, obviously. Vader versus Undertaker, to me, Barone, like this match was just off. I don't know what happened, but they should have had, a much better match here, in my opinion. It was another terrible finish on this show. I don't know who to blame for that. I just felt it was a big mistake when they cheap endings in the two matches that we saw earlier in the night, and then we got another bad ending here. The Undertaker rarely lost clean, especially in this era. So that's why I think they had a cheap ending. This was one
It
of the
was
biggest.
like how we just talked about how '97 was getting towards the rise of the company. Like this match still had this like hints of '94. You know what I mean? Where it was like horrible storytelling, horrible ending, horrible. You know what I mean? Like this is one of those matches where it's like, oh god, they're doing this shit, you know.
Yeah.
And like you said, there was something off with Taker and Vader. I think Vader was past his prime here. His prime was like 1990. He's 97 now. He's not as mobile as he used to be, and he just didn't click in WWF. Like he just wasn't that. I mean, he was still a monster, but Undertaker's bigger than him. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And the
Um,
Undertaker's WWF's guy, and the fans are gonna like him more, which they're supposed to. But something just was off with Vader and Taker here. Just I watched it today; it wasn't a good match at all.
No, yeah, this was one of the biggest wins of Vader's, career in the WWF, even though it wasn't really a good match. They had a much better match at the Canadian Stampede later on in '97, about 6 months later. But you and I, we talked about this before we move on to the actual Rumble match. I feel like the WWF got Vader 5 years too late because when you watch that stuff from like 1990 or even a little bit later, 91, 92, 93 at WCW, my goodness, like he could move, he could go. His gimmick was, prime. Like when he would wear that big ass mask that
Yeah.
on top of him, he just looked menacing and he was just a monster. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like all that steam was gone by the time he got to the WWF. Like, why do you think that was?
Well, WCW booked him as this monster ass kicking heel, and all heels in WWF were kind of like chicken shit. So
Right.
you see, like Vader would come out and he would get run off by guys, by baby faces, where it's like, no, that's not the guy he is. He doesn't care who you put in front of him, he's gonna run through him. And like we said, he was older, and I don't know, just like in 1990, in-ring wrestling was way different than what it was in '97. So when he's in there with a guy like, I don't know, Flair or whoever, uh, it's a different match than what it is here. Like there was no one in WCW like the Undertaker. There
Right.
was no one that big who could move like that. Where Undertaker had matches with guys like Razor and Diesel and other big dudes
Mm-hmm.
where they weren't bad matches, but like I don't think Vader really ever, and I don't know his whole career like that, but
Mm-hmm.
he didn't have a lot of marquee matches against other big guys that could move. So yeah, I
No,
don't know.
uh,
It was just off. Like it,
I agree with you 100%. So yeah, like I said, watch the Canadian Stampede, one of the best pay-per-views, of that Attitude Era or right before the cusp of the Attitude Era, 1997. If you guys listen to the Something to Wrestle podcast with Bruce Pritchard, find the Canadian Stampede episode. I mean, so many storylines were going into that, but that was a great pay-per-view. That's something maybe for Patreon we can cover one day because that was like super heel heat with Austin and Bret Hart at that time, and it was absolutely spectacular. So we're gonna we'll kind of skip ahead and we're gonna talk about the Rumble because so much kind of went into this. So to me, the original plan, for those who don't know, was for Bret Hart to win the Royal Rumble. The plan changed when Vince Russo was on WWE Livewire, said he picked Bret Hart to win, and apparently that pissed off Vince McMahon to change the finish to the screwy win for Austin. They were going to do Bret challenging Shawn Michaels for the WWE title at WrestleMania 13, but that was changed too due to Shawn's injury and the quote unquote losing my smile stuff. So that's what happened there. And now you go to the actual Rumble match, and you look at let's just look at the final five that were in this match. Let's see, I had it right here. The final five guys. I had it. Okay, I'm sorry. The final 8 dudes, man, in this Rumble. This is 97. Here's the final 8: Rocky Maivia, Mankind, Taker, Vader, Terry Funk, Bret Hart, Austin, and Fake Diesel, which was Kane. But it's amazing when you listen to that. All legends. But at this
All
time, Hall of Famers, all of them.
all of them are Hall of Famers, yeah.
But it's
And
just
it's
amazing.
weird because it's like Terry Funk doesn't belong, but he does.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like he's like the oddball out.
I
I
know.
mean, outside of Fake Diesel, but
Right. And you just look at it, how much a difference a year makes. You know, he was Rocky Maivia in 97. You're a year out from him being the number one heel guy going after Austin. You have Mankind, obviously, was, he's Mankind. Taker, Vader, Funk. And then you got Bret Hart, Steve Austin, and then Fake Diesel, which was Kane. Was it 10 months later? He's debuting as Kane
yeah,
at the Bad Blood pay-per-view. So those were the final 8. And so now we get into the Rumble here. When you get down to 5 men left in the match, it's going to be Diesel, Fake Diesel. He's going to Bret. At this point, they're along the ropes, and Bret comes up behind him, throws Austin out to a massive pop. The refs don't see it, though, because they're all on the other side of the ring, breaking up Terry Funk and Mankind's spot. And Austin crawls back into the ring. Austin eventually wins the Rumble. He eliminates 10 guys. And then you look at like the Iron Man of this Rumble. Austin was in there for 45 minutes. Bret was in there for almost 22. I I wrote down here Fake Diesel, but it's Kane. He was in there for about 18 minutes. What
yeah.
were
Every
your
Rumble, there's always an Iron Man, and they call it the Diesel spot, the guy who eliminates the most people. Austin was both of them for this. Like he was in there the
agreed?
longest, and he had the most eliminations. And he also had two of the greatest like spots in the Rumble, where he's in there by himself, just throwing people out, and he sits on the top rope and looks at his watch, which is something like,
Oh, it's a
it's a
famous gif.
meme, and yeah, it's a
Yeah.
famous gif, and it's a meme and everything. And then the other one where he's like dead tired, saying, "Come on, bring them all out." And then Bret Hart's music hits, and the look on Austin's face where
Oh,
he's
it was
celebrating
great.
with his
Yep.
hands on his head. And Bret got a massive pop when his music hit. So
Absolutely. It was awesome. Like, I like the finish. So here are I wrote down
this
5.
finish is phenomenal.
Oh, I know. And I have my 5 random thoughts here on the Royal Rumble match. And here's the first one. I like the finish. It was different, and it made me want to see what was going to happen next. It also put over how great Austin's character was and where it was going. The
Mhm.
Rumble's about making stars, and this helped propel Austin to the level that we'd all see him at for his main event run. They ended up doing the Final Four pay-per-view with Austin and the 3 guys he illegally eliminated, which was Bret, Undertaker, and Vader. And it was obviously supposed to be the number 1 contenders match, but HBK lost a smile. It was, for the vacated title. Bret won the match and then lost the next night to Sid, who, reportedly shit his trunks. Um, and then, he lost the title to The Undertaker at WrestleMania 13. But because of all of this that happened, the losing your smile to Sid, drop, eventually having to go up against The Undertaker, you wouldn't have gotten Hart versus Austin at WrestleMania 13.
No,
And
which is a 5-star match and one of the greatest matches ever.
yeah, so you all can thank Shawn Michaels for losing his smile for that. My next next thought here was Steve Austin was fantastic. This was a breakout, like he was a working son of a gun in this match.
All the people that only saw Austin like as a stomp a mud hole, stunner, drink beers, middle finger guy, which was fucking awesome.
Right.
Watch his stuff before he broke his neck and before his knees got shot. Dude,
Yep.
he could go in the ring. That's why he was brought in as like a worker, as the ringmaster or whatever. He was a good in-ring worker
Mm-hmm.
that could work with everybody. And this match and other matches he's had back in this time, show how good he was in the ring before he got hurt.
Yeah, there was a match he had with Shawn Michaels. Was it King of the Ring 96 or 97? And holy God, like he was going one-on-one, like he was matching move for move, speed for speed with Shawn Michaels. Like 96, 97, prime athletic Shawn Michaels. And Austin was keeping up, was
He's
doing
right there with
everything.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, like you don't, now when you say Steve Austin, you don't think catch as catch can style. Watch
No.
some of those matches, like you said, pre-neck injury. The guy could flat out go. He's he's a ringmaster. He's a master of the ring. What a suck ass gimmick. To me, there was a breakout performance with Austin. The spot, spots where he was alone in the ring were great. Like you said, man, I remember popping huge when Bret's music hit and Austin had that oh shit look on his face.
Yeah.
It's like one of those images you never forget. And Austin's work in the ring was great. His facial expressions were so very key to his success too. It helped his personality really get over. So then my next one here is, if you look at some of the people in this match, it's easy to see that things were getting better in the company compared to the lack of talent in the previous 4 Royal Rumble matches. I would say that, yeah, like you and I talk about all the time, when Michaels won those back-to-back, go look at some of the names that were in those Rumbles.
Yeah,
Awful.
outside of Bulldog, you realize why Michaels won 2 in a row, because there was nobody.
Right.
The one where he starts it and finishes it, everyone forgets it. Bulldog was 2, and he finished it too. Like they were 1 and 2.
Yep.
And they were really the only 2 in the match who had any type of credibility, and they go the whole way. It was like 38 fucking minutes.
Yep.
But yeah, you could see like the talent in this Rumble. Granted, you get people like the Sultan, who's Rikishi, and we got Hunter Hearst Helmsley, who turns into Triple H, fake Diesel and shit like that. But you see like Rocky Maivia, like we said, the beginnings of what's going to be the Attitude Era.
Right. And then so then and a lot of the wrestlers were yet to be elite at this point, but they were about to get there in the coming years. It's cool to be able to look back on a match like this, dude, and see like legit future massive main eventers before they got to that level. There are a lot of legitimately huge names in this match. The talent on the roster was very good from this point forward and into the early 2000s. I thought Jerry Lawler did a great job as a heel announcer. He really shined.
So good.
He was so good. He really shined here with some of his jokes, especially his comments about what he'd do if he got in there, which he said after he got eliminated in 6 seconds. Also, I think this was the last Royal Rumble that Vince McMahon called as a commentator. So there's a lot there. And I don't know if you noticed watching the match, my last random thought was, I didn't think the crowd was that good. I thought they didn't react very much for such a big crowd, although that was a problem for most of the night. Do you think that's a 60,000 people in that thing? Maybe the acoustics weren't great. I mean, you heard them really loud in the main event with Shawn Michaels, and you heard them a lot when Bret eliminated Austin. But other than that, man, was it just such a poor undercard that the crowd just didn't have much to get up for?
I guess it was like a poor undercard, and it was long, because like you look at the undercard and the 3 dark matches they had to sit through that they didn't give a shit about because they don't know who these people are. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know, the letdown with the Vader match, Vader and Taker. Maybe they were just like, I don't know, because you see some Rumbles where they're into everything in this era. Like when we talk about 01, you see like everyone gets a pop, every like spot gets a pop.
Yep.
That was like prime WWF and you saw it like in this one, the entrance music didn't work for some guys, like shit was off. So
yeah, no, I agree. So facts and opinions here of the Rumble match for me. Person that lasted the longest, Steve Austin, 45 minutes, 7 seconds. He had eliminated 10 guys, like we said. So here are my best performers of the Royal Rumble. Steve Austin, obviously, first and foremost. This was at this point the second best Rumble performance by a single person in the history of the Rumble to this point. Ric Flair in 92 was better up until 97, but this was very close, I believe. Bret Hart, I love this chemistry with Austin. It doesn't get much better than that. I mean, that goes without saying. Owen Hart, he was only in there for about 9 minutes. Nobody else really stood out, but his heel shtick was always just so damn entertaining.
Yeah.
Um, the best elimination, there were some really good ones. My favorite was probably Vader throwing out Flash Funk. That looks super painful. If you saw that, like, my goodness. Um, so if I give you my match, my rating on this, I think it had its slow points, but Austin, this was this should have just been called January Stone Cold Steve Austin, because he just did such an amazing job. He carried the entire event. I've always liked this Rumble because it's one of the most unique endings they had ever booked up until that point. And it's controversial, and some people may even hate that. I don't mind it, though. I give WWE super credit for being creative with this finish.
So do I. I thought the finish was phenomenal. Where, the finish starts when Mankind and Funk are eliminated.
Yeah.
Because then the referees are over there pulling them apart, and everything's done perfectly. Like, how you'll go back and you'll see like a spot where the ref's out of place, or something goes like this was perfect. Both refs were over there. Both refs didn't see Austin go over.
Mm-hmm.
Austin immediately looks back, notices that no one saw him, sneaks back in and throws everybody out. So it was perfect the way it was done, and it was different. We haven't
Right.
seen, like, the only other weird finish to a Rumble was when Luger and Bret Hart both got eliminated, and they were fucking joint winners, which was stupid. But that
Right.
was the only other like oddball finish to a Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
Where this was like, no, Austin didn't win, but he did win, and it set up that fatal 4-way match.
Right. And you're absolutely right. Like, the I guess what you could say is it's always good. You'd had a good Royal Rumble when you can basically have your storyline set through WrestleMania. And I feel like this Rumble did just that. And like I said, it helped what happened to Shawn Michaels, because then, like I said, you wouldn't have gotten Austin and Bret at WrestleMania. So it
Yeah.
really, and what WrestleMania 13 did was basically tell the world, yeah, I mean, Steve Austin's the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this Royal Rumble did, in my opinion. So now we get to the quote unquote main event of the show, which was basically the entire pay-per-view at this point was built around Shawn Michaels. They was in San Antonio. He's a hometown, hero coming home to try to win back the WWF Championship. He had just lost it a month prior to Sid at the Garden. That was where you could go back and you can hear Shawn getting heavily booed and Sid getting a monster cheer from the MSG New York crowd. So for me, this match was just decent, which is very disappointing to say when it's a Shawn Michaels match. It was probably the worst main event level match that Michaels ever had, because he was such a great performer in just every match. To me, the reason this was lacking is probably due to, one, Sid being god awful in the ring. Plus, Michaels legitimately, and this has been said so many times, had like 103 fever with the complete flu, was literally just coming out on both ends all day. So that likely affected the performance. I liked how the finish was booked with the camera as a factor, since that played a big part in their last match with Sid going over at MSG. Michaels winning a WWF title here was obvious, since he is the babyface in his hometown. And at this point in '97, it's a babyface territory. Because on the opposite end of the spectrum at WCW, it was a heel territory. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It just made sense to do the title change here. The crowd response for the title was by far the best crowd reaction of the night. What were your thoughts on that match? I know maybe you didn't watch it today, but I'm sure you've seen it before. I watched it
Yeah.
again, man, and Sid was just so bad.
Yeah, I've watched. I've seen it before. Yeah, Sid's not. He's never been great in a ring. He was more of a character than a worker. So, and then, like you said, Michaels was sick. The thing that I never understood back then, and it's still kind of weird now, is Jose Lothario being there. Just seemed like off.
I didn't
It was
like it either.
no. They booked it as like he was his mentor and like a father figure and all that stuff, but it never clicked.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was like because like no one knew what Jose Lothario did
Mm-hmm.
before that. It wasn't like he was. I can't even pull up an example. Like if you brought in like I don't know, Buddy Rogers or some shit like someone the
Mm-hmm.
WWF audience knew and
Yeah.
had him as like Michael's mentor, it would
Yeah.
have made more sense. But you bring in this random guy that no one really can get behind.
Right.
where you couldn't really get a lot of sympathy out of him when Sid attacks him and all that stuff. So I
Yeah,
always thought he was like weird placed
it was
during that.
super weird place. It's almost as if like, and it's a complete opposite when you look at like your example you might be looking for is if like 6 years ago, when Daniel Bryan was going on that mega run, Shawn Michaels was in his corner. Like
Yeah,
it would have made
that would make
sense.
sense.
Right,
Mhm.
it would make sense there. But yeah, I look back now and I was just never a fan of the Jose Lothario. I mean, I obviously to them they pumped it up to make it like here's the guy that trained him to become the star that he is, blah blah blah. But again, the audience outside of probably Texas and Mexico, no one knows at all who Jose Lothario is. Um, so yeah, and I think I've heard Pritchard say before it was just a swing and a miss, but Michaels wanted to only do it for like a month or two, but McMahon kind of pushed that a little bit further. So our final thoughts on this show, to me anyway, out of a 10, we'll go for a 10 rating here. I give it like a 4.5 or a 5, maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's right in the middle. It's average.
Yeah,
It's a lot of like bad stuff, but the good stuff's really good.
yeah, yeah.
Where like Austin going over and everything he did in the Rumble bumped it up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The Shawn Michaels win bumped it up a lot. But outside of that, it was like a meh. I could
Yeah,
go without watching.
I agree. And I wrote that it was an average to below average, like you said. I always have a bit of sentimental value when it comes to this event because of how much, I love Steve Austin and the way the Rumble match finish was booked. I mentioned earlier in this review that it was a breakout performance for Austin, and Bret Hart was absolutely spectacular. In terms of setting up his heel run or his heel turn over the next few months, this started it. This was a catalyst to that. The finishes of a lot of matches were super poor. There were a lot of heel wins and or cheap endings that the fans hated. That's probably partly why the massive crowd was dead for most of the night. They did pop for the main event, even though it was one of Shawn Michaels' worst main event matches because he was just flat out on his deathbed in some ways from what you hear from reports. The event, looked impressive visually inside of a dome, but it was just not a great show. And I agree with you. The best match of the night to me was the Royal Rumble with Austin winning that. The worst
Yeah.
match was, I don't know if you saw it, was Ahmed versus Farouk.
I've seen it, but I didn't watch it today. Like I've seen this whole show, but I didn't
Yeah.
watch. I only watched Taker, and then I started the Rumble and had to go do stuff. So
No, no, I understand completely. We both are on very short time clocks here of free time.
yeah,
But that's it for the 97 Rumble. Again, we try to go like we take a couple things out of these pay-per-views and then we talk about them, the big moments, because if not, we'll be here for 3 hours. So you know, for me moving forward in this show and for Barone, we have a lot of Patreon content that could be coming down the road if you guys, contribute to the show and help us out. Barone and I were talking about doing exclusive Patreon shows that are a little bit more edgier than our normal content here. We would take deep dives into, the Katie Vick situation. We can even do, where Mark Henry had some fun with a transsexual on television. Hands were given birth to.
yeah. Mae Young gives birth to a hand. The best
um,
part about that whole storyline is they brought that hand back for like the 20-year anniversary of it.
yeah.
That was the best part. But, yeah,
We
we'll
could
get into
do,
like the the fucked up shit that they could never ever get away with today.
Trish Stratus being walked around on a leash and barking like a dog. There's a lot we can get into, but that stuff's gonna come in January. We'll talk about that on future shows. But definitely head over to patreon.com/nerdthusiast to help contribute to the show, and you guys will get exclusive content from us. Also follow Nerdthusiast on all the social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. They do a ton of great giveaways, and please just follow us. Get alerts sent to your phone anywhere. Give us a follow. Our YouTube is growing and growing every day. We are so thankful for that.
We're over 500 now, I think.
Yeah, it's incredible the growth just over the last month or so. So head over to youtube.com/nerdthusiast. You'll find all the poker shows with our boy Anthony Sacali and Brian Keene, right? And then you got us, and then you got the Gamer Show with Matt. And Matt does an incredible job for all the nerds. And we don't say that in a bad way because we're talking about pro
We're all
wrestling.
fucking nerds. Our show's called
Exactly.
Nerdthusiast.
Right. So
But yeah, him
it's,
and Denny do a great job on the gaming stuff.
yeah,
And
they
with
really do.
PlayStation 5 just coming out, they got some stuff on there about that system and everything. So go check that out.
Absolutely. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to be just firing out shows probably once a week coming up here. If I have to wake up at 3 a.m. and record a show at Barone, then I'm going to do it. Because January is a big month for wrestling, and we really want to get involved with you guys here. So Barone, thank you so much, man, for hopping on. I'm Christy Francesco. This is a Nerdthusiast Wrestling Podcast. We hope you guys have a wonderful new year, and we will catch you guys down the road. Have a good one. Bye-bye.